Hey guys, it's C-Mac here. Today we're going to build a two-step verification app using Node.js, React, and a bunch of AWS services. So the way the app is going to work, we're going to build a website that to ask user, during the login process to basically verify their identity by sending a text message to their phone. Although it's always recommended to use third-party, reliable, secure application for this purpose, we're just going to practice this application to see how this technology can be built using serverless technology. We're going to make our application very secure using a technology called CloudFront, which is a content delivery network, and basically to protect our application against DDoS attack, denial of service attack. So this is going to be a hands-on experience. I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, for real-life production application, you always want to make sure you use something that it's very reliable and secure. You don't want to reinvent and build your own security tools. It's not recommended, but again, this is a practice to learn about serverless technology. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right, guys, we're going to start by going to our Northern Virginia region, and the reason is text messaging, as you can see on the left side, in Northern Virginia region is supported. If I switch back to Northern California, you're going to see the text messaging is not available. So to make this tutorial easy, I'm just going to go ahead and use Northern Virginia region. I'm going to click on create new function. I'm going to name this text underscore MSG, Node.js version 12, and we're going to go ahead and click on create function. One thing you have to remember, once we create this function, you need to give your user or your function access to SNS. So just go ahead into the role section in your IAM policies and attach SNS full access. Since I'm using basically account federation, or basically assuming your development role, I gave that to my basically main user that I'm using. So my function is ready. As you can see, it says index.handler. That's the handler that the name is needs to match with the basically Node.js export module. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a variable. I'm going to call it AWS. It's going to be require, and inside the require, we're going to have AWS-SDK. So we imported AWS SDK. Now we're going to go ahead and do exports.handler, as I mentioned. You guys know now. We're going to go ahead and receive something called event. We're going to have the context, and of course, we're going to have a callback. All right, and what we're going to do, we're going to create this Lambda function by creating a few variables. The first variable is going to be our SNS variable, which is going to be new AWS, the variable that we imported, .sns. So we just gave our Lambda function SNS access. So we're going to create some parameters here, and inside the parameters, what we're going to do, we're going to have a, let's say, message. It's going to be event.message. We're going to pass, we know already message structure. It's going to be string, perfect. We're going to have phone number, and this is going to be event.number. And of course, we're going to have a subject for our parameters, which is going to be subject. We're going to get it from our input, which is event. So we're going to pass something called event, which has a JSON object and contains all the information that we need to basically make this work. All right. So now in here, we're going to go to SNS.publish params, and then inside the params, we're going to have function, error, and data. So we're going to receive data, or we're going to receive an error. In case if you receive an error, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and say if the error happens, we're going to say console.log is going to be error, and error that we're going to print a stack. Perfect. So else, otherwise, if that doesn't happen, we're going to have console.log data. We're going to have the data back. Perfect. This looks great. Now, what we're going to do here, this needs to be 1. And in here, we have a, basically, we need to have a parentheses clause. Perfect. We're going to save this guy, and I'm going to go ahead and create a text message. So we're going to send the message. The message is going to be, hi, hello from CMAC. I'm going to show you the text message on my phone. I'm going to put the screenshot here. The second one is going to be actually number, because we promised to pass this to our Lambda function. And the number, I'm going to hide my number. It's going to be, the last one is going to be a subject, right? And the subject is going to be, let's say, test. All right, create on, click on create, and I'm going to set, click on test. And hopefully this function is going to send me some data, and we can take a look at it. So looks like we have an error here, and it says message dot, so we're going to put this message. Let's see what happened. We're going to go back to our test data, and yes, I misspelled message. We're going to save this. We're going to test it again. Hopefully we'll get a text message. It says your user, you don't have access to basically do this. We're going to go back to our permission. We're going to add policy. As I mentioned, SNS. I didn't add that. I need to add that once. All right, guys, I saved this message and reset the basically text message. And I'm going to just show you what I received on my phone. API gateway. And we're going to create a REST API for our React application, so we can hit that endpoint and send a text message to the user, which is going to contain a 4-digit code. So we're going to go ahead and click on REST API. We're going to click on build. By the way, you can find this basically a repo on my Code Engine Technology repository. I'm going to walk you through all this. You just need to click on second step verification React app, and I have all the steps and everything for you guys ready here. So let's go back to API Gateway. We're going to click on OK. We're going to say new API, and REST. We're going to say text, or maybe 2-step verification. We're going to name this function, and it's going to be just regional. Create the API. Once the API is ready, we're going to go ahead and create a method, and the method is going to be post, and we're going to say OK. And if you take a look at the integration type, we can just mock the function. We can hit another HTTP endpoint, or we can hit other AWS services. In this scenario, as you guys know, we're going to go ahead and call our Lambda function. So in this US East one, we're going to go ahead and click text messaging. We're going to hit save. That's perfect. Now we do have a function that's going to hit our Lambda function and come back with a 200 hopefully message. Let's click on test. We're going to create something here. I'm going to hide my number, and I'm going to say hello from CMAC 8, and I'm going to hit test. There it is. It says no, and I'm going to wait for the text message. All right, guys, we're going to use Visual Studio Code as our editor. I'm just going to go ahead and open a folder and create a folder in my C drive called MFA app, and I'm going to select this, and I'm going to open my terminal and create this application. It's going to be npm init react app mfa. This is going to install, start my React application. I'm going to pause the video. All right, guys, the installation is done. As you can see, I can open the folder. As usual, in every React application, we're going to have node modules, which is going to be all the components that we'll be using for our React app. And we have a public folder that basically serves all applications to the public internet and for our users, and we do have the src folder that contains all the code that we need in order to run our React application. So once the installation is done, all you got to do, you just got to do cd and go to the folder of your application and then do npm space start, and this is going to start our application using all these default values that you guys see here. All right, so perfect, we do have a React application. All right, I'm going to stop the application. I'm going to go ahead and remove a bunch of things here. So in our app.js, if I click on app.js, we do see we have a bunch of basically elements. I'm going to get rid of all of these guys because I'm about to start my own basically component. So what we're going to build here in our app.js, we're going to create a component. In React application, we create different components so they can be reusable, and we can use them everywhere in our application. So I want to go ahead and create a new file, and I'm going to name this file mfa.js. And what I'm going to do, I need to install two basically plugin in for my Visual Studio Code. One is Prettier and the other one is React Snippet. And if you go actually to this place, and if I filter by show installed extensions, no extension found, right? So we're going to go ahead and use Prettier. There it is. We're going to install this guy. It's just a good formatter. It's going to make our application look better. And also I'm going to use React, simple React snippet. Perfect. So basically I don't need to retype all these commands that I need to basically put in every single React file. So if I go back to my MFA, I can just go ahead and type imr, and as you can see, it automatically goes ahead and imports all the commands. So if I do imrc, it's going to actually import React and component, which is very, very easy. So I'm going to go ahead and type cc and hit enter. There you go. And now I can just name this MFA, and this is going to just return a division. Return a division, not C. Perfect. And I'm going to name this test app. Perfect. I'm going to save this guy, and we're going to go back to our app, which is the entry point of our React application. In here, what we're going to do, we're going to import this component. Since it's in the same folder, we're going to use / and we're going to say import MFA. Now, if I want to add this component to my page, I can just go ahead and do basically like HTML tag and use the name of the component with enclosing tags. Perfect. I'm going to save this guy, and we can go ahead and run this application. But before we actually do that, I want to go ahead and install Bootstrap and React Strap so we can make our application look better. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and install Bootstrap. And we're going to go ahead and install React Strap and React DOM and React as well. All right, we are installing React Strap, React, and React DOM. All right, now we installed React and everything. We can just go ahead and import Bootstrap in our application. Remember, you add this to app.js, so all the components will be able to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and use npm start. And hopefully our application will start with all the necessary components. So what I did, I removed all the default things that React created, and I added my own basically little component. So we do have an error. It says MFA is not defined, and if you look, the reason that's saying that, we have an mfa.js and it's exporting MFA, which is correct because I basically need to tell import MFA from this file. I just simply forgot to add that to my application. There it is. So now, as you can see, I do have a component called MFA within my app.js, right? So app.js is going to have multiple, for example, pieces in the application. Then one of them is a component called multi-factor authentication. This multi-factor authentication, we did all the imports and we created a class that simply exports a default value called MFA, and we use this same technique to import it in our application. So Now in this section, what we need to do, we're just going to go ahead and start by creating a simple, basically form. This is going to be basically a piece of an application. You can imagine you already checked the username and password, you hit next. Now you will be introduced to this form where you require to basically authenticate using basically text messages. So now we're going to create a form for our application, and we're going to put that in a container basically. And inside this container, we're going to have a class name. This is how we define classes in React, by using class name as opposed to only class. So I'm going to use a bootstrap technique as I'm going to use 4 columns. We're going to take a look at this shortly, but let me do offset -4. So basically offset -4 means leave 4 columns empty on the left side, leave 4 columns empty on the right side, that's 8, and put 4 in the middle, which is total is going to be 12. This is how it's going to work. Perfect. And I'm going to have a div. In this division, I'm going to have a class name equal to row. Perfect. And this is going to be a row. Inside the row, we're going to create a column. Let's division. And I'm going to say class name equal to b. That gives me more flexibility in case in the future I want to change this design so I can have modular components and I can modify the piece that I'm interested in. All right, so inside this division, the second one, I'm going to create a form group. Perfect. And inside this form group, I'm going to basically create a label for my cell phone number, right? And this is going to be a division, and this is going to be again a class name of row. Awesome. And I'm going to have another division that's going to have a class name of column 12. Again, this might be not necessary all of them at this time, but you're going to see in the future you're going to have more flexibility when you divide your basically divisions more efficiently. So I'm going to create a label. I'm going to name for phone, right? And I'm going to put this in H3. I'm going to say phone, or maybe cell phone number, whatever you want to name it. And underneath, once this is done, I'm going to close this division, right? And I'm going to have another division, maybe, and inside this one, I'm going to have again class name of column -12. And I'm going to just create a text box inside this. So it's going to be input. It's going to be bootstrap type. And the type is going to be phone, and I'm going to say name, it's going to be again phone, and ID is going to be phone. Perfect. And this is going to be required, so the user definitely need to basically put this value. Now, if we go back to our application, now we see there are a few things that we need to define in our application, and we're going to go on top and we're going to import all these guys from basically React. And one, this is going to be the second one, label, and inputs. We're going to import all of these guys from, and as you can see, there it is. Now, if we go back, hopefully we're going to have a form. Perfect. That's a cell phone. And so the styling doesn't look great. We're going to go ahead and fix those features. So first of all, I'm going to add a class here that says border. This is a default class by Bootstrap, and this is going to add a new border. So I'm going to add another class. I'm going to name this MFA row, and this MFA row, it's going to basically be an external CSS file. So I'm going to right click on this guy and create mfa.css. And inside this guy, I'm going to have this MFA CSS, which is going to be .mfa CSS, right? And I'm going to add some padding. I'm going to say maybe 15 pixels, right? Put padding. I'm going to have margin from top of the page. We're going to put 50 pixels. And of course, we're going to have the border, maybe radius is going to be 1 EM, right? So we're going to make this a little bit nicer. And I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, import this MFA .css file from the same folder. Perfect. There it is. Now, as you can see, we have a little bit space and the corners are rounded and they all look better. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add maybe a few more things inside this MFA row. I'm going to have all my H3 basically tags to have font size of maybe larger. And I'm going to say maybe all the H4. So inside this MFA row, if I have an H4, this is going to be font size. I'm going to maybe do this as a small. And I'm going to do color maybe as a fire brick. Perfect. I'm going to use these colors shortly. You're going to see how. Perfect. So far I do have a basically a form that only accepts a cell phone. This looks much better. And I'm going to keep going and maybe build another division so I can put this command bottom, and of course a place that user can enter the code that they received through the phone. So the form group is done. We're going to create another form group. Basically, we group all these elements in different sections. So I'm going to have another form group. Inside this form group, we're going to again create a division. You guys now know the drill. This is going to have a class name, and I'm going to have a row. And perfect. Inside the row again. Now we're going to have a division, another division. This time it's going to have a class name of col-6. We're going to use just half of the 12, and you're going to see shortly why. And inside this, we're going to create a command button, right? Command button. And a command button is going to have a class name of btn-block, right? btn-block is going to basically use the entire block of 6 that we're using for this purpose. And btn is going to be btn success. Perfect. Well, on click, if the user clicks on this guy, we're going to have a function basically that's going to handle this SMS, sending SMS message, right? Perfect. We're going to close this command button, and in the middle, we're going to say send text message. Send text. Perfect. If you go back, there it is. We use the entire 6 column out of 12 within the row, right? Remember, we are inside this division. This is 12. So every single time that you go inside a division, you get 12. Now divided by 6, so I used half of it, and I used btn block to cover the rest, and I used the btn success in order to get that nice green color. All right, perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and by adding one more piece and finish our form hopefully very soon here. So I'm going to have another div, right? And you guys now know the second one is going to be using the rest of the 6 column that we have available, right? And this is going to be, of course, an input. The type is going to be text, and the name is going to be code, because we're going to send the code to the user and we're expecting them to verify their identity, right? And this is going to be code again, not the placeholder. And I'm going to say unchanged, because as soon as they start typing something in there, I want to be able to check if they have the valid code or not. So I'm going to use handle verification function in order to basically react to these changes, right? And one more thing that I would just need to add here, I'm going to have a required right here. Perfect. So we're going to have the cell phone. We can actually have maybe a placeholder here. Enter the code here. All right, and if we go back, there it is. We're expecting to user to add the code in this section. So now imagine this is the place that the user is at the first place, clicked on login. Now they will be introduced to a second page that we're going to do this verification. So this is going to be a component that you can just re-import and reuse in different part of your application for example, important actions in your application. So perfect. We do have a simple form here. One thing I want to add here, guys, I want to go down and I want to put some maybe messages that things that I'm doing as like maybe sending a message sent, some kind of like messaging is nice to have in the application. So I'm going to create a division, and in this division I'm just going to go ahead and use a class name of text stack danger, and this is going to just be showing the text in a red color, right? So in this section, I want to tell the user if their code is valid or not, right? And at the end, I want to just give them a maybe H4. Remember, I had that H4. I'm going to use it somehow here to just tell them, give them some maybe status regarding this their message. This is going to be status-update and just a class name. And this is going to be reading some values from maybe our state. So we're going to complete that shortly. So inside any component, we do have state, which is basically internal storage for a component. It is not accessible from outside. So props, the difference between props and state is that props can be passed to the component, while state is something internal. States are modifiable, props are only readable. There it is. I do have a state, so I do have a box that I can put a lot of values here, or a lot of variables that I want to basically track here. So what I want to do here, first of all, I want to have a registration code here, right? So when the user basically wants to get a code, I want to place to basically have this registration code and generate it and keep it. I want to have a handshake basically place. So when the handshake is done, if it's successful or not, I want to kind of keep track of this. I want to have access always to users' phone number, and at the end I may want to have a status that say, hey, message sent, sending the message, so I kind of can track all these changes. So state, again, it's internal to a component, right? So I do have this state value, status value inside my state. So I can just go ahead and say, hey, this H4, it's going to read. Again, we're using JSX, which is a JavaScript XML, and a browser or React application is going to use Babel internally to convert JSX to Java, to pure JavaScript, so browser can understand and interpret this value. So we're going to say go to this value, right, and go to the state because it's internal to this component, and from there just find the status. It says perfect. We do have the status. If there's something here, it will be basically appear in this section underneath the send text command button. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and create a registration code. So when the component loads automatically, we want to be able to go ahead and create a registration code, like a 4-digit code, right? And the way we want to do that, we're going to go ahead and use component did mount. Right, so when component that did mount, it means when the component is attached to the page and it's ready, we're going to create a registration code, right? And this is going to be a math function that we're going to create a number, right, between 1,000, and this is going to be math down random time 9,000. This is going to math.random create number between 0 and 1, right? And we're going to times it by 9,000 and plus 1,000. So we're going to have it basically number as you can just use any type of algorithm that you guys want to use. This is just going to generate a dummy code for us for now, and we can send it to the user and validate their phone, right? And we're going to store this number, of course, in the state. Now you guys know that we have a registration code in our state, right? And we're just going to go ahead and say, hey, use this registration code and update the registration code within the state of this component. All right, perfect. So this looks great. One thing, if you notice, I did basically I put one registration code, and the reason is the variable name registration code is equal to the variable that I have within the state. These are two different variables. Pay attention. This is basically, it's going to be equal to registration code equal registration code. So it's going to be a key value, right? Put the registration code to registration code. So this could be something like this, right? So basically put registration inside this registration code. But since they have the same name, I could basically simply go ahead and have a cleaner code by using only one name inside our state. So one thing you need to pay attention, that I made a mistake here. You always, in order to update your state, you always want to use set state. Otherwise you will have unpredictable and really bad big errors in your application. Do not update the state directly. Always use this set state. Registration code, for now it's empty. We are not getting anything from our function, and let's see why. All right, we're gonna save this. Okay, it says registration code is 6132. The next part that we're going to add, guys, it's going to be three basically methods that we need to handle in this form. One of them is going to be basically creating a form, since we have the form group, but we never actually created a form. So we're going to go ahead and just create a form, and we're going to go ahead and say on submit. As soon as we want to submit this guy, we're going to say we're going to create a function that's going to handle submits. Perfect. So we have three functions. One of them is handle submit. One of them is going to be handle SMS. Remember, handle SMS. And the other one is going to be handle verification. Once we put the code, we want to be able to verify the user code, of course, when they enter the number. All right, so in handle SMS, what we're going to do, first of all, in handle verification. In handle verification, what we're going to do, this asynchronously. First of all, we're going to say async a handle verification, and we're going to receive an event. All right, whatever we pass to this guy, we're going to say this set state, set state, and we're going to say the status is going to be empty. All right, and we're going to say if the event that we just passed, the target, we're going to get the value, right, of the number that user just keyed in. We want to see if this is a valid code. Is equal to this the state, the registration code that we created when we started the component. If they're both, we're going to convert the both to string to make sure the comparison is exactly to string, and we're going to use three equals, which means don't do any conversion. This is like equal type and equal value, so equality in type and value, right? If that happens, then we're going to go ahead and basically set the handshake equal to okay, because if we know user key in the right value. So we're going to say this set state, and we're going to go ahead and set the handshake in our basically state equal to okay. We're going to say this code was fine because we just compared whatever we had inside the state in our registration basically variable that we just created during the application creation, and then we compare this with whatever user keyed in inside the text box, and they're equal, and we're going to return that back as an OK handshake. So one thing we need to always remember, that when we basically create all these methods and components and we attach it to this, as soon as the form gets submitted or get some actions, we're going to lose the track of this basically object, right? So we need to use something in order to mount this back to our application, and this is going to be this that handle SMS is going to be this that handle SMS. We're going to bind it to this again, so we don't lose this relationship between the component in our application. So the other one is going to be handle submit. Is going to be this that handle submit, and it's going to be that bind again to this, right? And then we're going to set the value of this that handle SMS, handle submit, and handle verification. It's going to be this that handle verification dot bind this. Perfect. So we need to close this guy right here, right? And our form is going to be closed at the end of this basically H4. Let me see. After H4, yeah, there it is, our form. We're going to just go ahead and close our form right here. Hopefully it's right. We're going to go back. It says form is not defined. We know for sure what to do. We're going to go ahead and just import form. Perfect. We're going to say on change. We're going to have a this dot maybe handle phone, because we want to save this phone in the state, so we can, when we issue the async call to our backend, so we can use that from our state. So handle form is going to be another mount that we need to basically do during our constructor method, right? It's going to be handle phone. It's going to be this that handle phone, and the bind. It's going to bind to this. Perfect. And of course, it's going to be handle phone, right? And if you think about it, in handle phone, again, we're going to go ahead and just set some values in our state. So we're going to say this that set state, and we're going to set up our phone, because we do have this phone within our state. And this is going to be, maybe we're going to add the number 1 in front of it, and whatever we received from the event that's being passed to our application. So this is going to be the event or target, the value of the phone. Perfect. And let's see if we can console.log this value. That's the phone. Perfect. All right, and we're going to go back to our application, and we're going to say 1310. Okay, as soon as we hit the value, we are getting an error. Let's go back and see what's happening. Event dot target. I misspelled target. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. And this dot state dot phone. 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. As soon as I add a number, it updates the state of the application. Perfect. This is what I wanted to see. Now we have the handle phone, right? Event ready. Handle SMS, which is going to basically, says, hey, we are sending the message, your code is this. So we're going to construct the message here. So handle SMS, we're going to say this dot set state, and inside this we're going to have in status, and this is going to be equal to sending text message, right? And it's going to be act as let the user know that we are sending the text message, and they'll be getting that shortly. So we're going to go ahead and handle SMS. We're going to say let message, because we want to construct the message right here, right? So because the number is going to be this the state, that phone number that we do have available, right? The user set that up. The message is going to be your code is, and then we're going to plus that, and we're going to get the code that we set up during the component did mount, the registration code that we received. And the subject, we're just going to go ahead and for now set it up to equal to test. Perfect. Test. So we constructed a variable that says it's my I'm the message. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to say event.prevent default, which means when you click on send, it doesn't actually submit the form. It waits for this method to get processed. And what we're going to do, we're just going to go ahead and issue an asynchronous call, await fetch. This is going to be our endpoint URL, right? And inside the endpoint URL, we are going to have the method. This is going to be equal to post. All right, and going to equal to post, and we're going to have some headers, which is going to be application/JSON. We're going to let them know that we are sending a JSON package, right? And we're going to say content-type equal to application/JSON. All right, great. And of course, at the end, the body of the message is going to be JSON.stringify the message. We're going to stringify the message and basically send it to endpoint message. So stringify, as you can see, basically it's a JavaScript. Usually, it's a conversion basically to a JSON object, right? Perfect. And we're going to pass that. We're just going to go ahead and say, hey, this set state. We can go ahead now, let the user know in our notification section that, hey, this set state, and actually we did that. It's going to be status, and the status is going to be saying the user text sent. Perfect. So one thing that we haven't done in our API gateway is basically we need to deploy our API gateway and enable CORS. So I'm going to go ahead and enable CORS, which basically is a security feature that when the basically cross origin, the request is not coming from the same source, the browser is going to basically block that in our endpoint. And by enabling CORS, we're going to let that happen because we're going to issue that command from our basically application, React application. So we're going to deploy this. Since we don't have any stage, I'm going to name this development. If you want to read more about CORS, you can actually read about CORS. Cross-origin resource sharing is a mechanism basically that allows restricted resources on a web page to be requested from another domain outside the domain from which the first resource was served. We need to enable CORS. So I'm going to copy this is our URL basically that we're going to issue the post command against this endpoint. Now in our application, all we need to do, we just need to basically apply this to our handle SMS function. So in our handle SMS function, we do have everything pretty much ready. We do have an error though here. We're going to use async right here, and the reason we're using async method because async calls are very common these days because you can just issue the command and wait for the callback. You don't have to keep the user waiting for the response like in old school, web applications. And we do have, looks like a problem here, and that is going to be, yes, inside the headers, and accept. This is going to be equal JSON. All right, and looks like we have a small error here. Let's take a look at it. Line 37, and we haven't received the event. Of course, when we handle SMS, we want to pass the event. Perfect. That's pretty cool. Now, I want to go ahead and put a cell phone number and test this application. I'm going to hide the number. As you can see, it says send the text, sending text message, and it says text sent. So if we hit the API gateway, I'm going to wait for the text message. Hopefully you receive a text message. I have not received a text message. All right, guys, the reason this API call didn't work, if you recall, in our basically function, in our Lambda, we're expecting to get messages as capital M, and I put a message with lowercase. So I'm going to change that to message, and it's going to be your code is. I'm going to put colon and then try the application again. There it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put the number. It says sending text. It says message sent. And hopefully, yes, I received the text message. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. 973-7973. And as you can see, as soon as I start typing, I get an error. So again, I put the target. It should be target. I misspelled the target. Is we need to have a section that as soon as the handshake is okay, we basically want to see that message on the screen. So if I go down, if you guys recall, I had an area that I wanted to basically do this logic here. So I want to say this dot state dot if the handshake is going to be okay, then we're going to say question mark. If that's the case, we're going to say your code is valid. Otherwise, we're not going to say anything. Perfect. So I'm going to go send another text message. I just got the text message. The code is 6002. Perfect. It says your code is valid. We're just going to go ahead to Amazon S3. If you take a look at the documentation that I have here, every single bucket that we want to serve as a public website, we need to basically use this policy for. So we're going to go ahead and create a website. I'm going to name this, for example, MFA-app-react, right? And we're going to serve this from Northern Virginia on the same region. We're going to go next. We're going to uncheck the block access. And I want to say acknowledge because this is going to be a website. It needs to be a public website bucket. So we're going to go inside bucket policy. Everything is off. In our bucket policy, we're going to basically use the application name in the S3 bucket. And we're going to say all the content can be accessed, and we're going to say save. As you can see, this is now a public bucket. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to properties, click on static website, and we're going to say use this website as a bucket, as in basically website. So this is going to be our address. We're going to save this. The reason there's not a file not found because we have no file yet in the application folder. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and reveal this in Explorer. All right, and in the same place that we ran our application, we're going to go ahead and say npm run build. So this is going to basically create a build folder for us, which is going to basically export all the necessary files to deploy our application. We're going to wait for this process to complete. All right, guys, our application build is ready. We can go ahead and use maybe S3 commands that say use S3 all this folder to and send everything to S3. We can use sync command to S3, and this is going to be basically the address of the folder. Right, there it is, and this is going to be AWS S3 sync. Everything inside the build folder is going to go to that folder, or you can just simply go ahead and upload all the files manually. But if you want to automate that, this is probably the best way. So one thing we need to do, we're just going to click on the bucket and go to bucket policy and access, remove the public access, and basically give public access to this folder. As you can see now, it says public. If I go inside in the properties, and now I should be able to hopefully access there's the application. I'm gonna send a text message again to just make sure the application is working. It says sending message. It says text is sent. I'm waiting for the text message. I just got it. It says 9242. And the application is working. But the problem with this approach is, as you can see, this is not secure, and someone can actually brute force this application, and we don't want to basically put our security part of our application exposed on HTTP. And definitely we always want to use HTTPS. We're going to actually go to our S3 bucket. Remember, for CloudFront distribution, if you want to serve your application through S3 and connect it to CloudFront, you need to go to your bucket, go to properties, and just copy the entire thing that's provided here, right? So it's going to be exactly the same thing. In CloudFront distribution, you always want to use that path. So now if you see it says redirect all the HTTP to HTTPS, even if you try to access, or it says just access HTTP. This is basically going to only serve our website through HTTPS, which is basically secure HTTP. We're going to go ahead. There's no field level encryption. There's a lot of settings in CloudFront. I don't want to go through all these settings, but you can of course go ahead and set web application firewall and web ACL. Basically, if you want to use AWS WAF to allow or block requests based on criteria, you can basically use web application web ACL and basically restrict access to your website. If you have your own SSL certificate, you can import it. You can use the custom one, but as you can see right now, our website is going to be something.cloudfront.net, which is going to be HTTPS URL. Then we can map this to our basically website and let the users basically access our application through HTTPS protocol. So this is going to take a while. I'm going to pause the video and we'll continue as soon as it's ready. All right, guys, I just forgot to add this index.html as a default root object. You guys need to go to edit and just change the default root object. It's empty now, but add index.html, and this is our web page that we want to basically access through our CloudFront distribution. So if you pay attention, this is our address, and we told CloudFront that we're going to access this website through HTTPS. And as you can see now, it says HTTPS, and it's actually the connection is secure. We're using HTTPS, and everything looks great. We are now connecting to our website through CloudFront, which is basically protected against DDoS attacks. So we could actually use a service called KMS in order to encrypt the number that we're trying to verify. That will be the real life example of this basically application. KMS as a service is a key management service that supports also FIPS 140-2 security requirement as well. It's a very strong service from AWS that you could use in order to encrypt your messages. Basically, your backend, your Node.js application will create the code in an encrypted fashion, and your application, your front-end application, React application, would make it call API call and ask KMS to encrypt and decrypt the message and then do the comparison. So you leveraging KMS would actually be a very, very useful approach for this type of applications. Provide this URL using environment variable, maybe a libraries or component like .env, some sort of environment variables. You could inject this during the runtime. You don't want to expose the endpoint URL in your application. This is just a test application, so we didn't care. But remember, in the real life application, you always want to use environment variables.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this. We just built two-step verification app using React, S3, CloudFront, API Gateway, Node.js, and a bunch of other technologies. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.